some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
Byrgenwerth is an old place of learning, and the Tomb of the Gods, carved out below Yharnam, should be familiar to every hunter.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Jeremy Greer.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a hunter's favorite.
Yes, and this week, this is the first episode where we're talking about Chalice Dungeons, the Pthumerian Labyrinth. And as you heard, we are joined by Jeremy Greer, the author and curator of Dark Souls Haters, the Tumblr, where he collects Dark Souls and Bloodborne-related hate messages, and also Not ECEC on YouTube. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Cole. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Jeremy. Yeah, this is your second time being back and not on the PvP circuit.
I was trying to count. I think this might be the third, because you did Demons, we've done Dark Souls 2, and then we did, now this is Bloodborne, right? So this is the third.
Yeah, look at that.
I was thinking about that earlier today. I think this is my 5th episode of Bonfireside Chat, which, I don't know.
I think that puts me up there.
That
gets me an award of some kind.
Yeah, that is, you are the most frequent guest. We definitely have not had anyone on 5 times before. No. You're definitely the most frequent guest. Oh, look at that. We'll have to rectify that in the future. Your numbers are coming up, Murph. So people are not familiar. Dark Souls Haters is what it says on the tin. Like, it is a collection of Dark Souls hate mail, but Dark Souls, being a hard game, inspires the worst in people when they are young and want to call people terrible names for beating them at it. And you put all those in one easy readable place. So
absolutely. We're the home of all of the homophobic, sexist, horrible language that you could ever possibly want to read in one place, unless you're going to go to like some other site, I guess. I don't know. The internet's full of this stuff.
Yeah.
But all of ours is specifically related to Souls. I started it a few years back when I was getting a lot of hate mail just for playing a magic character in Dark Souls 1. And people were calling me the worst names. So fortunately enough, Bloodborne doesn't seem to have that kind of audience. I don't know if it's a difference of gaming systems. Like, primarily a lot of our stuff came from the Xbox and not the PS3, but I just don't have a lot of Bloodborne hate mail on the site right now. I'm still getting Dark Souls hate mail, so people are still out there hating, just not in Bloodborne.
Yeah, I was wondering whether I imagine the blog would change a little bit, because something that I've noticed is that in Bloodborne, PvP in general, like the community, I've said this a couple times on the show, but PvP is kind of de-emphasized. Like, I don't see a lot of the community focusing on PvP, a lot of fight clubs and stuff. I still see people going back to Dark Souls 2 a lot for that stuff online. And that would obviously impact what you do, because PvP is where the majority of your stories come from. Like, you don't get people who come in who are just like sending messages to From calling the archers, the F word.
If From would give me access to their email account, I would definitely post every single one of those messages. And occasionally I do go on the official Facebook page whenever there's a big announcement, like when they announced Dark Souls 3 or the Scholar of the First Sin edition. Like, that was the big one, Scholar of the First Sin, because people kept thinking they were gouging for money or, whatever the phrase was. So I'll go on Facebook and pull comments from that, just where people say horrible things on there. But again...
But why didn't you balance the great sword animation?
Exactly. Yeah. Stuff like that is just hilarious to me. So that's what the site is. Come by and just don't let your children read it.
Has running that site for about 3 years now, like, taken any kind of toll on you?
Not really. Okay. I'm pretty immune to that kind of. I grew up on the internet. Like, I was on the internet when I was 10. So like the concept of bad language on the internet really doesn't faze me too much. It has been eye-opening in some cases of, I guess, just being on Tumblr and just kind of learning how Tumblr is, about what the things that you can say versus the things you can't. Even when you're quoting people, you'll still get in trouble for it. But a majority of the people that follow the blog and communicate with me on a regular basis have been very, very cool. So
yeah, very cool. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on this episode is because you are very active on our Facebook page, and I knew that you have definitely done your Chalice dive.
I have twice, actually. For this episode, it was my 3rd time through these particular dungeons that we'll talk about today.
Yeah, not everybody does them, because as these episodes will be a little bit weird. We're planning on doing 3 of them, to cover all of the chalices, because they are a huge part of the game by chronological real estate. Like, you're going to spend a lot of time here if you're going to do them. But one of the weird things is that they're so optional. Many people will go through the entire game probably without ever touching them. We're going to kind of talk about the mechanics and in this episode and kind of explore the beginning depths of Chalice. And that's self-serving, partly because we haven't been through them yet. I know I can speak for Kole to a degree that like he and I both don't have tons of Chalice experience. I messed around with them a little bit, but then bounced off, and then I'm just now kind of going back for the show. So I've not completed all of the Chalice dungeons. I've completed most of them on my first character, but died because they get hard.
They are super hard at the end.
Yeah, they get unreasonable. Fairly quick. And then the other thing is that people who know the Chalice dungeons know that some kind of late game bosses show up, and it felt weird to us to talk about them inside Chalices before we talk about them in their actual context.
Right.
So like we don't want to say like, oh, when you fight Solaire, son of the Moon Lord, in the Chalice dungeon, it is not it's not the same thing as when you talk to him in the spiders
Gullet, the spider.
Yeah, Spider's Gullet. Yeah, Spider's Gullet. The
Sounds like someone's been reading my Dark Souls fan fiction site.
Well, we're trying to get the word out. You deserve recognition for your work.
Yeah. Anyone who invented the Spider's Gullet deserves more internet fame than you have. So anyway, so we're talking about chalices here.
Yeah. These are optional content, and they're also super mysterious. Like in the announcements leading up to them, nobody really knew what they were. And I think that even until the guide came out, people didn't understand kind of the entire scope of how they worked. I think there were a lot of misconceptions leading into them.
Absolutely. Like if you... one thing you can take from these episodes on the Chalice Dungeons is if you're interested in the Chalice Dungeons and you are on the side of people who are like, oh, the guide isn't a good value, it doesn't have enough stuff, like the guide is really, really valuable for the Chalice Dungeons because there are a lot of weird kind of hidden mechanics in there, like weird curses and special things that can happen that are, kind of enumerated in the guide and that are very, very obtuse in the actual game.
Yeah.
And there's also unique loot, unique enemies, unique bosses.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of unique content that just doesn't occur in the main game for better or for worse. I think it's for worse. I wish that some of those items and enemies had been included in the main game, but you take what you can get. So.
Yeah. And knowing where to find that stuff and where to hunt it down and stuff. Essentially the guide chapter in the Chalice Dungeon chapter in the guide is like super useful.
Yeah. And we're going to, present some of these basics about this to make it feel a little bit more approachable. I know that I, just like most From Software game mechanics at first blush, had a lot of trouble getting into it because I didn't know the size and scope of what I was getting into. Like, for example, did you know that they are not all randomly generated? Because I didn't when I went into this. I kind of thought that everything was randomly rolled, but totally not the case.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. People were like, oh, it's like Binding of Isaac, but for Bloodborne. And I was just like, oh, yeah. You heard me more. But it's not that. And the ones that are not randomly generated actually do fit into the story, which is something that I didn't know for a while either. Right. Because the ways in which it fits the story and the ways in which it ties into the lore are very obscured. When you were talking about kind of bouncing off of them earlier, I think part of it could be, and I could just be speaking for myself here, but they are like a little tedious.
Yep.
They are absolutely tedious.
Yeah, like this is not so the way that, and we'll do our kind of final wrap up on what we think of Chalice Dungeons at the end, but as kind of a preview, like I'm glad they're there. Mm-hmm. I think that anyone who argued that they're the strongest content in Bloodborne would be insane. Like this is some of the worst. Like the Chalice Dungeons as a whole are probably my least favorite area in the game.
It's one of those weird things that if you would ask me of like, what would what would a Souls game be like if you took away all of the story elements and the kind of atmospheric storytelling, but would it still be a good game? I would have said absolutely, yeah. And it is. It's just kind of boring.
Yeah, it's not. You're just kind of moving as good. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a little bit like a monkey's paw wish because we talk a lot about the mechanics and how satisfying all of it is, but the mechanics laid bare while satisfying, they lack kind of the higher motivation than just in the moment survival.
And part of it is also just variety too. So like you're using those mechanics, you're going to spend a lot of time on any one of these given dungeons where you have kind of one enemy set and a limited set of rooms. And you're just going to spend a lot of time there, like longer than you would spend in say like Old Yarnum, So like in the main game, even in a very large area, it's difficult to get bored. Here, it seems like it's just easy to get a little bit bored. With what you're doing. And I know later it kind of tempers that with Insane Challenge. So it's no longer boring. It just kind of monotonously hard and like monotonously entertaining was what I was about to say. But that's an oxymoron. But it feels kind of right. I don't know.
That sounds like something out of a Brave New World.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about how these do fit into the lore.
Yeah. Well, all the terrible stuff that happened to Yharnam, it had to come from somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and it did not come from without. It came actually from checking out these ruins.
Yeah.
Beneath this large labyrinth, and they're carved. They were carved by this race called the Pthumerians. So I'm going to choose to pronounce that. And this is like a superhuman, like godlike race that discovered and served the Great Ones. The Great Ones are something we've been hinting around in the main episodes, but we're going to get real into them pretty soon. But they serve these kind of outer gods.
Yeah, and boy, do they look spooky. They look like a race of very tall, gaunt Scream mask.
Yeah. I was just about to say
exactly.
The Scream mask from Scream or the Scream mask from
Scary Movie 2.
Or Scary Movie 2 or Scary Movie 3. No, I meant the Scream, the painting.
Yeah.
Like they look like they look like both those things, like these elongated, stretched out faces.
Yeah, and they pop up all over the place. Most of the enemies that you encounter here are going to be, these Pthumerians that are kind of just kept alive by some kind of unholy force or something like hollowing with them. So this is where the holy medium was discovered by the scholars at Bergenworth, and Alfred tells us this much, right? And it continues to be prospected by both Bergenworth and the Healing Church. Although not quite actively, because most of the people who are still down there went completely out of their minds. In fact, there's a wonderful quote in an item description from one of the sets of armor that you get down here. Truth oft resembles madness, inaccessible to the dull of mind. Those who go mad are merely thoughtful souls who failed to reach any conclusions, which will probably feel familiar to you if you tried to extrapolate where this fits into the main story beyond just the evidence that is laid out there right now.
Yeah, it's a great quote. Like that's a real that's like kind of almost like the doll ember of Bloodborne. That's a really kind of encapsulates a lot of the game. I think
the two sets of armor that you get from the chalices we're going to be covering today, the two sets of armor you get from it have some of the best item descriptions out of the entire game in my mind. Like they're both very, very solid item descriptions.
Yeah, the bone ash and the white bone ash, something like that, and the madman's armor.
The madman set, yeah,
pretty cool. So essentially this is where they went down and they found the stuff that set things into motion. When you talk about how we're going to be fighting Pthumerians a lot, that is true in what we're covering today. But then later, we kind of get the progression of how Pthumeria decayed by exploring later chalices and learn that they ultimately had a fate very similar to what we're seeing in Yharnam.
Yeah.
So right now we're just doing, it's kind of like, it's interesting the way that when you explore the Chalice Dungeons in order, you're kind of seeing the decay of the civilization. From it just kind of being hostile and full of just regular dudes who happen to be hollow and assholes, but they're dudes, to seeing the beast scourge and then ultimately seeing what kind of happens, which is spoilery, and we'll talk about it later.
And a real neat intersection of mechanics and plot. Like the difficulty level of the Chalice Dungeons are assigned by depths. If it's depth 1, depth 2, depth 3. And then it kind of feels like at the same time that they're, depth 3 is deeper. So you're going deeper and deeper and closer to the source and seeing how more ruined it became. It's one of those classic Miyazaki Souls things that really just I really enjoy.
Yeah. This like the Pthumerians kind of remind me of the Denis from Myst a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, like I'm getting strong vibes. So that immediately wins it some points for me and an atmosphere that is absolutely not reflected in the minute-to-minute play.
Well, you can also, if you know the correct code, you can turn around in the Pthumerian Labyrinth and just solve it.
Yep.
So it's similar to Myst in that way as well. You just have to know how to put the tumblers in the right order. Like, this is a totally different game. There are tumblers. That's not true. The other thing, so mechanically though, and I guess we'll talk about this later, but it's also interesting because it has that lore thing, and we talked about the mechanics laid bare. This is also a place for a lot of Souls legacy mechanics. where they kind of are quarantined in Bloodborne. So this is where you're going to find your traps and secrets.
Yeah.
In a way that are not in the main game. And I applaud them for not being in the main game because they wouldn't have fit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if Canehurst had a hallway with swinging blades, like what are they doing? You know, like that doesn't make any sense, but they make sense here.
We had a hard
like
enough time reconciling that with Sens.
Yeah, exactly. And this is more like, this is just meant to be like this lost mad civilization, you know, like they can do whatever they want. They don't make sense to us because they're so close to these greater outer gods that they, you know, they're mad. Like it was a mad civilization to begin with, and has gone madder. Mad civilizations just got madder.
This is the only place you find illusory walls, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a weird thing to me.
I still have not found one, even though I know they exist down here.
Neither have I.
And I keep looking, but I just know they're there, but I can't find them.
I'm dulling my weapons by attacking the walls.
Me too. Yeah.
And I'm using a Tonitrus. I don't have much durability to work with.
Yeah, I was using the Blades of Mercy, and like they also don't have tons of durability. And eventually I switched, but anywho. So the way that we get in here is you get your first chalice from the Bloodstarved Beast, and these are that other line of tombstones in the Hunter's Dream, where you perform a ritual at one of them.
Yep.
And you need to use ritual blood. One really cool thing is the ritual blood has ranks similar to the cold blood you find. And if you look at the images for the ritual blood, it's like a pool of blood. And then as it grows up in number, a skull is coming out of it.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. Like ritual blood 5 is amazing looking.
It's like they're growing a crystal.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these things are like that. Like you look at the different chalices too. So if you look at like Lauren and then like the lower Lauren, like it's like a skull, and it's a skull growing out of this thing. Like it's just a worse version of the chalice.
Kind of along with that, I love the items that you need to use to make offerings.
Oh shit!
Either the corpse pieces or
that's
like
all great.
like actual relics from saints and stuff, like flowers that only grow or mold off of stuff. Like it definitely makes me feel like a goth kid for like, oh, it's corpse mold. But
it feels good, but like something that is a problem with Chalice Dungeons, I think, is that you do Chalice Dungeons in order to do more Chalice Dungeons.
Yes.
Yep.
Like it takes away the feeling of reward when you get through a really difficult passage and you find a saint's wrist at the end, which is just something that you use later to get into a different dungeon.
Yeah.
Like you're all moving towards this climax that we'll eventually talk about, which is very satisfying. You know, like the thing at the end, you know, at least from a lore perspective, like, you know, coming to this thing that we find at the end, but it really is like climbing a very long ladder. You know, it doesn't feel like the sense of gamey reward is really there.
Yeah.
In a lot of this stuff, and even down to like the soul rewards. Like if you go into this first one right when you get the chalice, it's actually a pretty good way to get some experience. But if you come to it later at all, you know, you don't get very many blood echoes.
Right.
For these first early areas. So it does feel like you're literally just doing it to do it, which is fine, but no other part in the game feels like that. I think. Yeah. You know, if you contrast it with like Hammock Carnal Lane or Charnel Lane, the you know, it is an optional area, but you're doing it for this kind of gameplay reward at the end.
Yeah, even the items, some of the items that you get, you'll originally like there's something very later on you get this called a haze extractor. Like it's another hunter's tool, and you get really excited, like, oh, I'm gonna be able to do. Oh, nope, it's just used to make more chalice ritual.
That's so that item is so
excellent.
Weird. Like I'm drowning in fucking haze. It's like that's one of the most common like things you find in the dungeon. Like who needs this extractor? It's so weird.
The only other rewards that you get are upgrade materials, which, depending on when you do this, could be valuable, or, you know, just kind of consumable, you know, just items that'll benefit you. And like what's weird about that is, like, if you're treating this as a way to get upgrade materials, what that is doing is kind of inverting the way that I feel like you should play this, which is, oh, you're going to do the chalices until it feels like it's getting too hard, and then go back to the main game with the benefit that gets you in order to tackle that until you level up, and then you're just trying to like level off of each other with it. Like that's a little bit the flow that it feels like maybe they didn't try to establish, but, you know, kind of makes sense given what they laid out and the way that progression works.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. So there are 10 preset dungeons that we're talking, and then there are root dungeons, which are the randomly generated dungeons. We will probably talk about those as kind of a footnote in one of the future episodes. We're not talking about them this episode, other than just letting you know what they are.
Yeah.
But those are your Binding of Isaac by way of Bloodborne.
Yes.
Dungeons.
Yeah.
Everything is randomized.
And each of these dungeons, whether they are preset or whether they are root, they are assembled modularly like IKEA furniture. So they're going to use very similar rooms and enemies and just kind of minor variations on those themes.
Yes.
To its detriment.
Oh God, yeah.
Because that's one of my main problems with even the first one. Like you get through the first layer of the chalice and you go to the second one and it's almost exactly the same thing. It's the same rooms, it's the same layouts. It's so boring.
Yeah. And they're big. Like these are not short areas. Like each individual layer is really huge. And sometimes like it does give me that feeling of like getting lost, which is kind of fun. Like, oh, this is it has labyrinth in the name. Like, I should be getting lost in it. But that doesn't, like, I don't like that in games that much. Like we were talking about Hemwick again, like, and we were talking about the linearity as being a strength. I think that's true. Like, I don't always want like 1,000 side paths to explore in a game. Like I want, and if so, they need to be meaningful. Whereas like a lot of these things, like it feels like it's kind of unthoughtfully like loops back on itself. There are a lot of shortcuts that are not well considered.
Yeah.
And the Chalice Dungeons, to where like it's not very linear, but to no end, other than the fact that it's supposed to be this maze of corridors, which I get, but I just don't think that's for me in a game. That's not my favorite thing.
And with the way each layer is structured, with the exit being so close to the entrance, it feels a little bit like an inconvenience to have to go find the lever to open it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and that's actually a kindness. Like it is a kind of thing. So if you die after you pull the lever, you can just go immediately through the door.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the goal in each one is you got to go find the lever, which is kind of guarded by a mini boss at some point that opens the door that's near the beginning, and then there are little side treasure rooms on your way, or treasure paths. Like they're not rooms. Like it could be like a healthy stretch of dungeon, and these are where you're going to find again more chalice rituals, or ritual materials rather, and then eventually you go to the next layer, and eventually you get to a boss, or eventually you go to a boss and you can get to the next layer, until eventually you get to a boss that opens up the next chalice.
Right.
That boss drops the next set for you.
Yeah.
It's probably important to note too that if you're going to go through all of the Chalice Dungeons, it's actually very important on a layer by layer basis to go through those side paths and collect all of that optional treasure, because that's where you're going to need those upgrade materials, and it's either that or farm enemies to do it. And farming is not my thing at all. So go, you can even dodge past them and open up the chest, get it, and then die, and then now you have it. But go through that process and go make sure you find those ingredients.
Even in a Chalice Dungeon, exploration beats grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wait, like I was just thinking about, because you bring that up, and like the way that chalice materials or ritual materials are kind of an unsatisfying reward actually bleeds really heavily into the main game, because you're not just going to find these in the game. You're going to find these everywhere in the world. Like you can get to a very difficult to find treasure chest somewhere, and there are two, red jellies in here. What the fuck is this? So it's actually like kind of, if you just want to play the main game and not dip into Chalice Dungeons are an active detriment to the main game. Like if you're not actually going to do the things in here, they actually do kind of negatively impact the game. And like, it's one of the ways that I would tie it into the whole, Bloodborne having less equipment being a downside. Like it being that there's less of that kind of dopamine squirt and less reason to explore in areas where like, you get a madman's knowledge or a sage's wrist at the end of a difficult passage. So it just adds a little bit more chaff to things if you're not intending to do it. If you are intending to do it, it's cool, but it's like it's a key. It's not, we talk about in Metroidvanias most of the time on Watch Out for Fireballs about Super Metroid does key items really well, because you get something and yes, it opens up a door, but it also has a utility function. So you never feel like it's Doom and you're running around collecting colored keys. Like, I have the grappling hook. That's going to allow me to traverse, but it's also going to allow me to get to more areas. Yeah. And these items are keys that don't have a fun double function at all.
It would be marginally better if the Chalice ritual items were used to as good of effect as they were in Hemwick and other parts of the game. Like, it makes sense to find a fuckload of eyes in Hemwick.
Yeah.
You know, like just from a story or atmosphere perspective. Like, that wouldn't completely make up for it, but like if they were going to go this direction, and there are thematic links between, you know, what you find in some places, these areas, like that could have ameliorated it somewhat.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
It just kind of goes into the general kind of like feeling I kind of have on them while still being in favor of them in general.
Yeah.
I think there is a little bit of variety. We kind of bagged on that, but there are 4 different types of dungeon based on 4 different chalices.
Mm-hmm.
The Thumero, which are the regular, you know, kind of Chalices 101. The Hintertomb, which is darker and has a lot of poison enemies in it. And then the other 2, which we'll cover later in the series.
Yeah.
And kind of talk about that progression, as you mentioned. I'm just trying to avoid not talking about the last one because, again, it's kind of spoilery, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Won't be soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you get to those by killing bosses in certain areas of the game. So there are 2 optional bosses that you can take down to get into these places, which those guys are cool. So when you're rolling up a root dungeon, you can actually use these additional rights to kind of put a modifier onto these places, always to make them harder.
Yeah, it reminds me of Bastion.
Mm-hmm.
Bastion, you got to unlock those badges that made things harder, but you got more experience in it.
Yeah, so you can good.
The sequel to Bastion did that as well.
Transistor,
thank you. That name does it. Yeah. Did exactly the same thing, and I like the way they do this because it kind of controls the way you create the dungeon, and it also controls the loot that you get from it. So if you use all 4 of the optional items, you will actually get some very high-level gems to put in your weapons that you can't find in the main game.
Yeah.
It's totally not worth it, but you can do that.
Do you want an extra 2% on your physical damage when you're at 10% or less health?
Yeah.
Sign me up. Oh, it doesn't fit in the socket on your weapon? Okay.
Yeah, well, fuck. Even though, like, and that's a thing, too, because another reason why collectors... and by that, I mean not in-game collectors, but people who play Bloodborne to collect things, love these is because you find variants of weapons.
Yes.
And one of the main way that those are variants is because they can accept different gem sockets. Yeah. So if you want to have a Blades of Mercy that takes crescents rather than, you know, triangle gems, this is your bag.
Have you guys talked about gems on the podcast at all?
We just got we just got the tool. Yeah, we just got the rune one. We have a little bit, but we probably could stand to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we don't have to get into it. I was just kind of curious. I didn't remember one way or the other.
We talked about how cool it is that you're mashing blood into your weapon.
Yes.
I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we didn't talk about how that actually articulates very much. So we will.
Yeah.
But to me, like, some of that feels like PvP optimization.
Yeah.
Right? Like getting the absolute best version of the weapon that you want that can accept the absolute best gems is never necessary in the main game. Rarely necessary even in the Chalice Dungeons. So it just becomes like this weird optimization strategy that is for something I'm not planning to do necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is just another way of not necessarily saying these are bad, but just not 100% for me. They're like 60% for me, you know, or 65. They're not, whereas the rest of the game is 100% for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of my complaints too is if you kind of do want to play more Bloodborne, but you're kind of done with the story, so you look at Chalice Dungeons as an option to, like, hey, I'm going to see something new, and you decide to co-op, like, hey, I'm just going to ring my bell and let someone summon me when I help them with their game. The rewards are kind of dog shit. Like, they're just not. It's just not fun. It's just echoes, and maybe you'll get a blood gem, assuming you get to the boss. Probably not, because the dude that you're helping is probably going to die at some point. Like, it's just not fun, and you don't get to fight. Like, it's not like putting your sign down for Orcine at Smo, where you know you're going to have that epic experience. And this is just like you're going to get some stuff.
Even though, like, the dungeons are much easier to go through and much more fun playing them with somebody.
Yeah.
Some of them that I did for the show, I played through with Illusory, because I was having a hard time with previously when we were going to do the Lower Pthumerian, I was having a hard time with the boss of that, because it's one of my weaknesses is that boss. So I put out a call on Twitter to get help, and Illusory answered, but then eventually we just did other areas, and we went through co-op, and it goes by smoother and more fun when you have someone with you, but the rewards are bad.
Yeah.
So, like, it's like somebody doing you a favor. Like, there's not very much in it for them. It's just kind of like, hey, yeah.
Huh. Well, I mean, doing co-op used to be a lot harder too, because they hid the item that you needed, the short root chalice, behind a boss, like pretty late in the progression of even what we talk about on this episode. Too.
Yeah.
Now you can buy it at the Insight Merchant, but up
Yeah.
until I think the first patch, it was definitely kind of like something they locked you out of.
Also, you can if you open up your chalices, when you make them if you want to be able to get help or be invaded. If you want to be invaded, they have to be sinister. So use that sinister ritual material. But if you just want help, you open up your dungeon and you have a little glyph, a little 6-letter code that you can give somebody, and you can set a password. So you can actually just co-op with your friends. Like, they make it easier than it's ever been in a Souls game to co-op, but there are other ways it's goofy. Like that person has to have completed the dungeon up to where you're at. So you can't just get help on the boss. You have to do like the whole dungeon with somebody, or they have to do the whole thing up to your point.
I thought that changed with the recent patch, though. I thought you could just use the short root chalice.
According to
password, and they would
Lucia,
just warp.
that would be, but the connectivity is shitty. I guess is what Illusory is saying about it. But they did make it like so it's easy to just play with a specific friend.
Yeah.
Which, just for boredom's sake, I would recommend doing this with a friend.
Yeah. And they're fixing that connectivity stuff all the time. Like the most recent patch made it easier to matchmake through the password system.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this stuff is your challenge mode things, and Bloodborne, is already very difficult, but these get extremely difficult. The beginning of it is just kind of like early to mid game content, but later levels are meant that you should do these co-op or on a later new game plus cycle.
Yeah.
And the reason these things are static to your new game cycle. So you can do these at any point, and I think they're meant to be played over the course of several games.
Right.
Some of these later ones, if you're going to solo them, you probably need to be in New Game Plus or New Game Plus Plus to be strong, or you want to be at a comfortable level to tackle them.
Yeah, the guide recommends that for like anything beyond depth 4 or depth 4 and above, that you be 140 plus in Blood Echo level or whatever it is. And the game, like new game regular mode, caps out at around 80 in terms of their recommendations.
Yeah. I wish the guide had been out earlier, because I went through all of the Chalice Dungeons, not just the ones we're talking about today. I went through all of them at like maxed out at soul level 100, still thinking there was going to be a PvP scene, and thinking like, I need to, this is going to be level based PvP invasion, so I'm going to keep this character kind of low. And it was miserable, guys. I'm not going to lie. It was not fun.
I can't imagine that it would be anything but. In a weird way, though, Chalice Dungeons are kind of great for like zoning out and listening to podcasts.
Oh yeah.
While you play Bloodborne, because there's nothing to pay attention to. I mean, there is, but there's no story. There's not going to be any cutscenes or any dialogue or anything. You need to think
There's
about
stuff
that
to pay
much.
attention to. There's nothing to think about.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Nothing is going to take up the audio track in your brain.
Yep. Yeah. So it is a good podcast thing. So without further ado, that's kind of our 101 entry on Chalice Dungeons. Forgive us if we've got anything wrong, or if there's anything we didn't cover that we eventually will cover when we talk about Lauren and Ice, or Ithil rather. But let's talk about the chalices we're covering today. And we're not going to go point by point through these.
No.
Because they're really repetitive again. We're just going to talk about some individual scenes that we like in the layers, and then hit the bosses.
Yeah. Because that's where the magic happens.
Yes.
Sometimes quite literally, it's fire magic.
Yes. Yeah. Which is interesting from a lore perspective.
Yes.
Why is there no pyromancy in Bloodborne? Well,
there totally is. You just can't use it.
Yeah, it existed in Thumera. There was a race that had extensive blood magic and pyromancy. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You just had to dig to get it. So.
And that one werewolf.
Oh yeah.
But I think he escaped.
Yeah, he's he shows up later, so we know his origins.
Yeah. Let me see here. I just want to ask one more question, because this is also related to the messengers and lore kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Jeremy or Gary, I would ask either of you, did you realize that you can light up those messenger lamps outside of certain doors?
Yes.
I did not until I was looking at the guide to prepare for this episode. So like, my normal Minecraft strategy of, you put torches on places you've been, totally unavailable to me. So I was wandering around lost, and I already have a terrible sense of direction in these games. So
they're very like the messenger connection. Even aside from that, it's very interesting because there are messengers and statues to messengers in Pthumeria. So at some point they came from there, presumably, and they're also not always benign. Like some of the traps are take the shape of messenger statues. They don't look exactly like messengers coming out, but the fire-breathing traps that you run into are a little reminiscent of messengers. So that is, like I've never gotten my hands on the lore of messengers. Like I've never really understood them. I don't know if like maybe you guys have, and you guys can let me know. But I never really quite understood them other than just kind of like helpful imps that play around like babes and love hunters and support them.
Yeah, like dressing up.
Yeah.
And wear funny hats. Yeah, exactly.
All of mine wear cracked pots on their head right now. But I just wonder, like, so there's got to be something to them, and it's connected to Pthumeria, but I don't actually know what the connection is.
Right.
So
yeah, the Pthumerian Labyrinth, you start out, and all of these are going to be 3 layers until you get to one particular level later on. But yeah, this one starts out with kind of like this big empty ravine with these rats and some kind of poison water at the bottom.
Yeah. So we're going to be dealing with that. And it does look like one thing these areas do well aesthetically is that they look gross.
Mm-hmm.
Like this oily water. And then later we run into just kind of corpse filled areas where it's like, oh, this is like fat and oil rotting from these corpses.
Yeah.
Like this is disgusting. And that's great. Like they do a good job of making it, look lived in a disgusting way.
Does it make it to your top 5 worst smelling Souls locations?
It probably.
Yeah.
I mean, later on, we're going to get to some places that look an awful. They look really defile-y.
Yeah. Lower Hintertomb. That's a bad smelling area. We run into some new enemies here. Rats we've seen before, and kind of just like regular Pthumerians, these Dreglings, which are not, are just dudes.
Yeah.
And we run into these Labyrinth Watchers, which are these big kind of like shiny babies. Like they're nude. Like you can see their butts.
Well, that's
oftentimes.
the Merciless Watcher.
Oh, okay. He's mercilessly nude.
Yeah. Yep. He has no mercy on your eyes.
Even when you knock them down, you oftentimes enough see their weird, smooth, like genital-less crotch area.
Yeah, they're Oblivion horse texture ding dongs.
Yeah, they're real shiny.
Yeah,
it's real gross.
Nobody
man.
loves oily Homer.
Yeah, they're so oily.
I love their tactic too, which is just to roll around.
So apparently, I've heard a lot of people say that this is a Dark Souls 1 PvP callback because so many people in Dark Souls 1 PvP were naked, fast rolling with a big giant weapon that they created this monster-looking creature to guard some of these switches, which I don't know if it's true or not, but if it is, it's absolutely hilarious.
That's pretty great. Because they come in different varieties.
Mm-hmm. They're the ones who are clothed, who are they kind of wear like Uruk armor or whatever, and have a bunch of different kind of weapons. And these variations are going to be the ones who, on this kind of variant, are going to guard the switches.
Yes. Yeah. We do run into traps.
Mm-hmm.
They're like swinging blades on bridges, like straight up Sen's Fortress style.
Yeah.
Here. And we run into these bell ringers, which are really important. They're going to be all over a lot of the Chalice Dungeon experiences we have, and they continually summon enemies until you kill them.
Right. These also pop in the regular game if you summon the Beckoning Bell. The sinister bell-ringing woman will pop in and either bring in harder enemies, the ones that glow red, or invaders who will come in as well.
Yeah. So eventually, you make your way through again, and we're just gonna cruise through and just talk about set pieces. So if it feels like we're going quick, like there's honestly not that much to talk about these hallways. Hallways and rooms, and then like that one goddamn room that's like the 2 bridges above an area full of incense burners, where you can cross, but there's always like 6 exits, and I don't know which way to go, and it doesn't end up mattering in the end which one you go to because they all loop back. So you
go to look at the strategy guide, and you're like, how do these maps even make sense to anybody? Like, where am I? Where did I start? Where am I? I don't get it.
Dark Souls is one of the hardest games to map.
Yeah,
I find like maps of Dark Souls are very rarely useful. And
they're beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like very beautiful, but very difficult to do, and it's because a lot of times because of the verticality involved. Like you would need almost like a Metroid Prime-esque moving 3D map to make it work. But eventually, you get the lever, and then you get to the first boss, and like some bosses are reused in Chalice Dungeons, but many of them are new, which is really cool. And you're running this first one, the Undead Giant.
Yeah, And this is kind of like if you took the asylum demon and gave him big old like scythe arm things.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's your regular kind of big dumb guy fight where you're trying to get around behind him. Except because it's both of his arms that are weapons, he has a little bit of reach to get around you.
Yeah. And there are multiple variants of this guy too.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna keep running into this guy.
Yeah.
And he's super gross. Like he's got that big pustule thing. I don't know if I said that word right. Pustule.
Yep.
On his leg that you can burst and it hurts him and blood splatters everywhere. Like the dude is just super gross.
He's got candles embedded in his back.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he's been reading Madonna's 1992 book
Sex book.
Yeah. I don't know if it's 1992.
Is that a thing? Sex book? I know that
she had a book
Madonna's
called
sex was called Sex, where she talked about squatting over a mirror or whatever. But
Yeah, she talked about candles too.
Okay.
I think she talked about candle wax being an erotic thing. You guys ever put out a candle on your dick? It's not erotic. It's a boner buster and a half if I've ever felt one. Like
out of necessity, like you had nothing else.
like somebody's pointing a gun at me and it's the only source of light in the room, and I need to make a quick escape.
Yep. Your hands were up, and
and my dick is erect over the candle.
Yep.
And I have to use it like a bell.
Yep.
To
Exactly.
snuff it out and then dive out the way.
Yep. And you can't blow on it because you're trying to talk reason into this person who's pointing a gun at you.
Like I'm furiously trying to give myself a Kegel orgasm so I don't have to actually touch the. I don't like
It's like Bluetooth, man. Hands free.
Yeah. Been trying for years. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, getting candle wax on your dick doesn't feel good, even if Madonna says it does.
I don't think you're supposed to put it on your dick.
I might have misread that.
I'm pretty sure the book specifically told. Like my stepdad had like a metal bound cover of this book specifically, and I remember looking through it, going like at like 14 years old, going like none of this is real, right? Like this has to be terrible. But I'm pretty sure someone at some point put candle wax on someone's dick.
Oh sure,
that's the way to get a sternly worded letter.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so what happens after you fight Candle Dick?
After you fight Candle Dick, you go down this elevator. Before and after the main areas of most of these layers, there's a hallway, and you always want to make sure that you check these doorways. Sometimes they are just walls, but that is where we're going to find these treasure things. There's not one now. We'll tell you the first one we get to. But
yeah. One thing about the treasure rooms, the ones that are explicitly treasure rooms, is they're kind of beautiful.
Oh my gosh, it
Like,
looks
they
so
look
great.
Really nice looking.
Like the red drapery.
Yeah. Like these are some of the most visually like well-designed areas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just look really, really cool. The actual treasure you get is not that fun, but and the treasure chests are all unique too.
Yeah.
Like it's very rare that you run into a treasure chest from the that you would see. They're elaborate. Sometimes you're opening coffins. Sometimes it's these big chests, and sometimes it's these small ones.
Mm-hmm.
I love the wee little chest, the little tiny chests. Those are so cute.
Yep. Little toy chest.
I don't know, like if this is true, but layer 2 feels darker than layer 1. I don't know if that's something they did intentionally or if it's just something that I noticed.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But chalices are definitely not for people who are using a two-handed transformed weapon.
Yeah, you want the torch or the light that you attach to your belt.
Yeah,
in these areas.
Bagmen show up here on layer 2. Guarding some ritual blood, which again, if we wanted to go mad from not drawing any conclusions, I don't know why bagmen show up where they show up.
I don't know. Like they are not what is it?
The channelers.
Yeah, the channelers for this game. Like I want them to be, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also these flaming arrow traps, and I'm saying here that areas warp in, or enemies warp in, but that might just be because of the sinister ladies. It felt like they were warping in independent of those encounters.
Well, they do. There are traps you can step on where they appear. Is that what you're talking about?
Where they spawn.
Yeah.
Just where they'll pop up surrounding you. And like those dreglings, I mean, yes, they are dreglings, but they will like outnumber you, and they attack very quickly in a way that the crows do that specifically subverts the regain system.
Yeah. So you have to really use your space to your advantage. If you get caught in one of those traps, like get out of the circle and then try to find get them to a choke point. Yeah. The thing about the bagmen, just real quick, going back to the lore reasons why they're there, if there are any, you could argue the places where they're collecting people for the reason we'll ultimately find that they're collecting people in general. But at some point in the game, and this is, I guess, a minor spoiler, but they disappear. like there are no more bagmen. If you get past that point in the game, there are still bagmen in the labyrinth. So I don't know if they just didn't get the memo, or if it is like, because there are
Well, they
some
don't get
weird,
any reception down there.
yeah, exactly. There are some weird things about like I hate using time travel as any kind of supposition when there's no reason to think it's there, but there are some weird things that we'll run into when we start running into certain reused game bosses that are here that I don't know why they're here. If it's not time travel, like there are things that are down here that my understanding is they're unique. I don't know why there's another copy of them here. Did you guys come to any conclusions there without getting too spoilery? I know I should just have this conversation in 4 months, but like it just occurred to me like that this kind of reminds me of that. Like if the bagmen are still there from when bagmen are active, like they're just plumbing the depths looking for people, which would make sense. Why are they still there unless there's some kind of timey-wiminess going on that also explains why certain other bosses are down here?
Yeah, after Dark Souls 2, I just kind of stopped asking myself, why is this enemy here? Because
Yeah.
there was never any satisfactory answer. Scholar of the First Sin did a good job in correcting some of that, but with these guys, especially in the Chalice Dungeons, where everything feels like they just hit the random button and then saved 10 of the random generations, like, okay, these are going to be our 10 story chalices. Like I can't come up with a good reason without getting into some pretty crazy sci-fi time travel universe on top of universe, multiverse type things. So I was like, they're there. That's good. They drop stone shards, sometimes bloodstone shards sometimes. So that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, my closest reckoning is no less of a cop out. Is just because old ones or because dream, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing concrete specifically for why you encounter some things that are definitely like really unique and pinned to the cosmology of this world.
Yeah.
Like I can't get some kind of causality there because one of those had to be the real one, and it may just be like, this is some lesser name, some lesser version of that, which, I mean, how difficult would it have been to change the text on those guys and say so-and-so's nephew or whatever?
Yeah. I don't have an explanation for it. And I want people to, that's your challenge. People who are listening to the show is let me know why that happens. And even if we don't read it on the show because it spoils later things, I want to know what people's thoughts are.
Yeah.
So you get to the boss of this area, which are the Merciless Watchers and Chieftain. And these are 3 of those ogres at the same time. And this is these are interesting fights. This gets repeated a couple of times, but the Chieftain stands in the middle and he has a blunderbuss. And the other 2 guys kind of harry you. It reminds me a little bit of the boss fight we'll get to, the Shadows of Yharnam, just using the name, but where it's like 3 different things with 3 different movement speeds. And trying to manage them a little bit.
This is also a crazy arena because this is one of the stock rooms, like this kind of multi-tiered staircase place with the chandeliers. And it feels specifically set up for this encounter because of the one that has the gun.
Yeah. Yep. And he's just there essentially to interrupt you while you're fighting the other 2 guys. Yep. It's not amazingly hard, but it's neat. Like a lot of the boss fights in the Chalice Dungeons actually like.
Yeah.
After that, you get to the layer 3.
Which does introduce some variety. Like this is a massive underground garden. At least a portion of it is.
Yeah, that big middle set piece, which will run it. The thing is, every time they introduce a new set piece, they just use it a lot.
Yep.
Which is a bummer. Like this thing shows up all the time from here on out. Okay. We end up running into this new enemy, this fluorescent flower, which is an enemy we do run into in the main game. We just haven't run into yet.
But only once.
Yeah. And it makes sense for it to be there too. Like like if it's going to be somewhere in the main game, it makes sense it's where it's at.
And I would say that like it's worth running into in the main game first because it's such a once you see them in the game, it's so dramatically different from any other enemy that you've fought that it's so new, and especially in the area that you guys will eventually talk about, like seeing it right there, you're like, what in the hell is going on in this game? I don't understand it.
It cuts such a strange silhouette. So what this looks like, it looks like a cross between a gigantic, like 2-story tall centipede. 2 stories probably overstating it. But it looks like a gigantic centipede crossed with like a flower, but running up its gut is like a seam of gaping dragon teeth. And it has this kind of like glowing bulb, and it uses to do like these kind of energy attacks that you really haven't seen done so far outside of like the brain suckers.
Yes. Yeah, they also have a swooping around, like they move, so they don't just do that because you think like, oh, let's get close and fight them, but they actually will get kind of swoop around and hit you from behind. Like there's not really a safe zone on these guys. The two ways that I try to take them on is either out damaging them quickly, or their heads. They have multiple targeting areas, which not very many enemies do in this game, and their heads take a lot of damage to distance weapons. Like I was playing through with my arcane build, and spoiler, like they did not buff arcane very much in that patch, so I'm still not doing very much damage. But if I'd use a projectile spell against their heads, I could almost one-shot them with it. But I just had to hit them in the right spot, which is kind of neat. And the way when they die, their bodies fade away, and their head falls as kind of a flower, which makes me think that their bodies are not actually there. They're made of energy or from this other dimension or something like that.
Yeah.
The effect is really, really unsettling.
I love the design. Like these things are so creepy. They just don't look like they belong anywhere.
Yeah.
They also are super weak to poison, which I only discovered because you don't get many great gems in the main game. And when you run across this, I just happen to have a poison gem on my weapon, and you hit it one time and it starts ticking health down. So I mean, I never actually tried the poison knives, but I'm sure that just like that, you could hit a couple. Like would make this area pretty easy since there's two of them in this area. You could tag them with the knives and then go do something else and then let them die on the side.
Or make later areas where they just copy paste these guys. Like there's two of them here.
Later
Areas where there's 12.
Remember this? Now there's 3.
Yeah. Well, and even more. Like there's an area where there's like literally 8 of them.
Jesus.
So it's the same arena. It just there's 2 of them in each corner covering each other. It's a nightmare.
Or it's not, because you can literally just run through it. You aren't missing that much.
That's true. Well, that's the thing, right? Like you can do that for all of the Chalice Dungeon shit, but if you miss those upgrade materials, you're gonna have to go back and get them. Yeah. And I'm trained by Souls games and Bloodborne to think I am missing something.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't want to run through something the first time, but like that arena is fucking unreasonable, the one I'm talking about. And I can't remember. I think it's in Lower Pthumerian Labyrinth, so we're not going to talk about this episode, but it is unreasonable. Like it is a really, really obnoxious arena that like I'm just torn. Like I want to clear this out because I'm playing a Souls game and I want to clear it out and see what's to be seen. But it is so tough. Like there's other enemies too. It's not just the 8 of these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, these guys drop arcane haze, so you need that as a material later, and there are plenty of these guys. But eventually, you also get an arcane haze extractor, which allows you to turn other ritual materials into arcane haze.
Yeah. There's a treasure room. This is the first treasure room that we encounter. You just have to really be paying attention. I missed these at first, and I had to watch some kind of like Chalice Dungeons Explained video. And I'm sorry, I don't know who made the video that I watched that actually kind of like laid out the rhythm of each of these floors. But if you are kind of in a chalice haze, like one tends to be, then you may run past them. So always make sure you check those pre and post hallways.
You had chalice hypnosis.
Yep.
Like just night driving. So eventually you get to the boss of this chalice, which is the watchdog of the old lords.
Such a good name. Such a good boss too.
Yeah. I think these guys are really hard. They're big lava dogs. And their face is way bigger than you think it would be.
Go fighting lava dogs.
Yeah, go Minnesota lava dogs. And they kind of do some tricks we've seen before in previous games, but not in Bloodborne. So like they have an element of area control where they will kind of barf up lava and make certain areas of the arena, untenable to you.
Yeah,
I also really like fighting this thing because if you hit its head enough times, it breaks off its carapace, and then if you hit its head after that, you do way more damage. That's one thing I really like about Bloodborne's bosses, specifically this one, and how there's kind of a levels of interactivity going. That not only do they have phases, but you can kind of chip off their armor, or you can hit a sore spot on their leg or whatever.
And that's so weird too, because like you don't really see that in many other places, even in this game, where like most bosses, as you phase them, they get tougher. They either get more aggressive or they get more evasive. And here you're actually like very tangibly turning the tide in your favor.
Yeah, like oftentimes it would just be, you fight it until it eventually roars and some particle effects pop out, and then it's angrier. But here, and you also can break all of its legs, If you focus attacks on any of its legs, they'll break and it will stagger it for a moment. So you kind of have some tools to fight him, but he's also really, really aggressive. Has a very wide swath with its fire neck, kind of like Fire Blast. So it is very difficult to kind of stay behind him consistently. And he also has that AoE that all enemies that don't want you to get behind them have. And
don't forget the charge. The charge will mess you up.
The charges are really rough. Because if you fail to roll through that or fail to get out of the way, that it won't one shot you, but it almost will.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah, and this is the easiest he's going to be.
Yeah, and we're gonna fight him again, because it's Chalice Dungeons.
Have you guys both beat him later?
I have not.
No, I haven't gotten. No, yes, I have, but it was when the game came out, so it's been a while since I played it. It was in my first run through with Chalice Dungeons, where I didn't quite finish them, but I got further than I am for this show.
I was so happy when I finally finished that. I had to put the whole video up on YouTube, like it was an accomplishment. So ridiculous.
Are you just always recording?
The PS4 is always recording. So once you if you finish something, you just hit the share button and then save the video clip, and you can go back and edit it and upload it to YouTube from there.
Okay, I'm not a professional who makes media about video games or anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So he drops the Central Pthumerian Chalice. So we're on to the Central Pthumerian Labyrinth.
Yep.
Layer 1, nothing happening.
Nope.
Nothing
new.
I have 2 notes in my notes about this, which I was just typing down yesterday when I was playing through. And the first one is level is really boring, and the second one is about the boss.
Yeah,
that's it.
And we have 2 bullet points under this H3. So yep. So yeah, the boss again, also kind of nothing special, because we fought this guy under, I think, tougher circumstances earlier in the season. Yeah. This is the beast possessed soul.
Yes. Yeah. Who is the same guy who is at the bottom of the weird tower in the cathedral ward that led down to the little bagmen area. So it's a pyromancer werewolf. Super, super aggressive. We're going to run into this guy later as well, and he's tougher than he is here. But he's still kind of tough here.
Yeah.
And also that fight was optional, and you could even just run past it. This is the first kind of mandatory one, or at least critical path one.
Yep.
Or you can just totally not find it on your first playthrough like I did.
Yeah, it's true. So you head on to layer 2, where this is like a little bit more, they introduce a new enemy, these slimes that drop from the ceiling, which are a classic Dark Souls thing.
Yep. I love the design on these. I don't know if they just ripped the mesh wholesale, but the fact that it is just skeleton jelly.
Yeah, they've got a lot of bones in them, which is really great.
Yeah.
And we're introduced to scorpions now. Which are pretty cool. Some of which are covered in baby scorpions, and when they die, they explode into tiny scorpions that scuttle away, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, that's pretty good. I enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah. And these guys will poison you.
Yeah.
There's some stuff like poison doesn't come up as much here as it does later, but yeah, they're starting to really play with status effects in a way that the main game does in spots, but not as pervasively.
God, just thank God there's not a frenzy chalice. I'll take poison all day long. But just the frenzy chalice dungeon would be too much for me. Another new enemy here, the Labyrinth Rite Keeper. Which is this hunched over witch that has these bowls of fire and skulls that shoot magic at you.
Yeah, she looks like a potato bug or a pill bug, depending on what you call them in your region of choice.
Did you guys think that this was a one of the witches from Hemwick when you first saw it? Because that's exactly what, when I first saw it, I was like, wait, that looks exactly like that other witch, but they're not at all. They're just kind of similar, I guess, similarly posed.
Yeah, semicircular crone.
Yeah. Yep. I recognized her immediately because of my semicircular Crohn's disease that I have. I poop entirely in closed parentheses.
It's like a Play-Doh fun factory.
Yeah.
Do you have to get a special toilet, or do you have an attachment that goes onto any toilet for that? Is that what happens?
Yeah, I have an attachment that goes onto any butt, and I use it on my butt, so I can. It's easier than.
It's a converter.
Yeah, I've got a European poop converter. Diaper attached. that allows me to straighten out my coils.
God damn it! First the dick wax and now this. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm the common denominator here.
I'm just trying to outdo the episode with Patty and CJ from 20 Humanities, where you did nothing but talk about male ejaculate the entire episode. So whatever I can do to make it as dirty as possible.
That's so quaint that you call it that.
Yeah, I'm surprised that's not a ritual material you find Saint's ejaculate, and it's just like a rusted Kleenex box from the old ones.
Rusty? Why is it rusty?
Because it's old.
Okay, cool. Oh, fuck. The Keeper of the Old Lords.
Yeah, I like this boss.
I really like this boss.
It was barely a boss fight for me. I ran up to her and attacked her, and she was done.
It depends on when you go here. Like, I think that if you go here later, she's super easy. But she is, you'll run into her as a regular enemy in the game. And she's a lot like a hunter fight.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, except that she uses pyromancy.
Which, again, why can't I use pyromancy?
That's because it's a lost art. It's a Pthumerian lost art.
I'm kind of wondering if that's going to be something related to the DLC.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
really,
We're gonna get some.
I would really hope so. Yeah.
That'd be pretty neat. They've never done that. They never add like a whole. Well, that's not true.
Hex,
They add
yeah.
dark magic, yeah, or they add dark magic.
Well,
in
yeah,
Dark
I
Souls
suppose
1.
that's what I mean.
Yeah. I dig this fight a lot. And then later you run into her, and that area I was complaining about. There's one of these just wandering around. So there's just a boss from earlier wandering around this area with fucking 8 of those flower centipedes.
Can I say I am so happy to hear you say her, because I put a video of this, one of the later fights with this boss on YouTube, and I actually got like shitty comments for calling this boss a her as opposed to it, I guess. I don't know. And I even made a thing in the description because I was like, I don't know why I'm calling it her. Like, there's no indication that she's female other than like a tall pointy hat, which I guess a dude could wear just as well. But yeah, I got like shitty comments because I called this boss a her as opposed to anything else.
It's weird.
And I looked at the strategy guide. There's nothing in the strategy guide that just says it.
Yeah.
Which seems mean, but I mean, it could just be an it. But
Well, Jeremy, a slip of the tongue is unforgivable. You need to be legitimate.
I guess so.
Exactly.
I do I do collect $70,000 of Patreon money every single month. So
I'm looking at pictures online. I think that she has like kind of a feminine walk.
Yeah.
Is maybe what I'm picking up on. Which is not obviously a man can walk with a feminine walk as well. But I think that she's got enough female signifiers to like comfortably make that assumption.
that's kind of what I thought too. Either that, or I was thinking she just reminded me a lot of Witch Beatrice from Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, that's where I was going. That, and also, like, if I'm in doubt, I will use her as a pronoun.
Well, I mean, at some point, like, yes, you can't actually determine the gender of anybody by looking at them, but that is the safe way to, like, if they're using, gender signifiers of one gender or another, that's what you err on the side of,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't, if somebody's wearing a dress and wearing like a lady's hat and everything, you refer to that person as a her, because those are choices that person made to wear female signified clothes. Like if they correct you, that's great, and go by that. But if, that should be the assumption that you should make. It gets into, I mean, I know this is a video game, so it's not real material, like real life, but it gets into some real kind of shady territory. Like, I don't want to refer to any person as an it without.
Have you played Dragon's Dogma? Either one of you?
No, I really want to. That is like in my pile of like big RPGs that I need to play and finish, along with like Nier and Witcher. So
I have not.
The comment that I got on YouTube was, no offense, not EC, but a lot of bitches need to go replay Dragon's Dogma and recall what the bandit mages looked and dressed like. And I'm like, dude, I've never played that game. I have no idea what you're talking about.
How can I take offense by that since it's so nonsensical?
I have no idea.
Like this is like, no offense meant. Here's a stream of word salad that like it does not make sense even within context. Yeah, that's, I don't know, that's obnoxious. Anywho, you fight this guy and you get to layer 3.
Mm-hmm. Layer 3, which has a new kind of Dregeling kind of enemy, which will ring a bell lantern. This is separate and distinct from the bell ringing woman.
Mm-hmm.
And this will just fill a room with corpses. In fact, raise them up like it's the undead crypt.
Yep.
Or like it's Josh Groban.
Yep. There's a very funny boulder hallway, which is just like a very Indiana Jones-esque trap that feels kind of out of place, but It's there.
Hey, it's just like they're calling back to Sins with every chance that they get.
Yeah.
No, remember Sins Fortress? Everybody likes Sins Fortress.
Yeah. What if it were not designed? what
if we put Sense Fortress through Google Dreams? Actually,
Yeah.
that would be a lot like this because of the eyes.
Yeah, that's true. I like the pilgrims that you run into here, because there are a couple of different instances of non-aggressive enemies throughout the Chalice Dungeons, and every time I run into them, I like it. Just because if we are, kind of spelunking through this old civilization, it wouldn't make necessary sense that every single person that you run into wants to kill you. So these guys are like these. They're similar to the spirit you run into, these gaunt Pthumerians that can do these AoE magic things, but they're just non-aggressive. Like they just stand there and look at you.
And if you attack them, they will quickly go back to being non-aggressive. Like they will attack you and then go back to their routine. Yeah. So part of me wonders why they're called the pilgrim, right? Because a pilgrim comes from somewhere. So is this somebody who is coming from above to to visit this holy place? Somebody who's affiliated with the church or with Bergenworth, or is this somebody coming from below? Good.
They have like a Pthumerian look to them.
They do.
Yeah, so I don't think they're coming from Bergenworth. Maybe they're heading towards the surface from the bottom of the labyrinth.
Yeah.
And this is as far as they got, or I guess vice versa. Don't know. You find a treasure room here.
This is the first one that has like the crazy red cloaks. Also, it has a wonderful like dead meditating figure.
Yeah. Which these look really good. And you get that sage's wrist, which will be useful way later. And we fight another boss, and this is another boss I like a lot.
Yeah.
More or less, if the boss has like Old Lord or Pthumerian in the name, I'm into it. This is the Pthumerian Descendant.
Yeah. And this is kind of one of the less degraded versions of the Pthumerians that we've seen so far, right? Like he has, this relatively unblemished skin. He still has like the dead eyes and the crazy mouth, but he is in good shape as compared to the ones we have seen so far.
Yeah. And this is, again, it's a little bit like one of those duel fights. He has these blades, and halfway through the fight gets a little bit more aggressive. He breaks his blades into pieces, I believe. Isn't it like a trick weapon?
Yeah.
Partway through the fight. So that's interesting that the Pthumerians had trick weapons. I don't know exactly what to make of that. Is this also, or is it the guy later who has the crossbow?
It's the guy later.
It's the guy later. Yeah.
Gotcha. But this guy's pretty interesting. Like, this is a good fight.
I really love these one-on-one kind of duel fights, and it happens sporadically through the main game as well. But this just the dashing around, the dodging, and then the parrying and the visceral attacks, like it's so much fun to play. Like it's one of the highlights of the Chalice Dungeons for me. This one and then the last boss we'll talk about are just so good.
Yeah, I always like fighting a person. Like I think the beast-based bosses in Bloodborne are the worst out of like the classifications between like otherworldly, human, and beast. Yeah. They're my least favorite. So on to the Hintertombs. There's actually a Lower Pthumerian Labyrinth, but we're going to cover that next episode probably.
Yes. And we're going here just because it's one that became available here recently. We found it on one of these bosses or the other, and also it is of a doable depth at this level, whereas the Lower Pthumerian Labyrinth immediately jumps up to 3, I believe.
Yeah, it's 4. There's 4 in the lower one, but the boss of the third layer is spoilery.
Yes.
So
okay.
Just to save you a couple of correction emails, the Hintertomb Chalice is in a chest, I think, on layer 2, and the only reason I know that is because I got to one of those big fancy chests on one of the side route treasure rooms, and opened it up, and there was absolutely nothing in there. I was like, what the hell is going on? And so I looked it up in the guide, and sure enough, it was supposed to be there, but I guess in New Game Plus, they don't even bother replacing it with like, I don't know, bloodstone shard or like a ritual blood. It was just an empty chest. But I got all of like the noise that you get when you open the big chest and everything, but just totally empty chest. It was really, it was kind of a bummer.
That is a bummer.
Yeah. So thank you for saving us those emails.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. This one actually has a little bit of a lore significance. Like, where is this in the labyrinth? This is kind of the annex. This is the place where the Pthumerians who are still tending this place are kind of chipping away at the walls and making a new kind of part of the labyrinth in order to store their dead.
Yes. Yeah, and they're just kind of like when you run into At some point, I believe you actually run into somebody doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It might be in the later on.
Yeah.
But they are just kind of mindlessly doing a thing, which is like, I always like running into that
Mm-hmm.
in games. That's used when we do our Scholar episode, that's used a brilliant effect early on in Scholar of the First Sin. But just kind of the idea of this kind of going through the motions of what you did when you were alive.
Yeah.
I like a lot. So there are some new elements that are kind of introduced. There are these kind of exploding boxes, crates, or whatever these things are, jars. They're kind of different ones, I believe.
Yeah.
And there'll be an enemy poised above throwing Molotovs.
I thought that they were throwing Molotovs at like the corpse fat oil in the lake below you.
That doesn't burn. It's
Okay.
definitely like the objects that are there
Okay.
that burn.
Huh. Significantly less metal, but okay.
Or that explodes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The corpse fat is still there. It's still gross.
But later you do walk through some liquid, because I noticed, and I thought it was today, but I could be wrong, where you when you walk through it, you kind of get a status bar icon that shows you're more vulnerable to fire. So maybe I'm just confusing this area with another one, but there are areas, Kole, that will make you light on fire just with the stuff on the ground.
Huh. Weird.
There are also coffin traps here. Like if you see a coffin in a hallway, people bust out of it.
And that's why you always use a chain.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Coffin Gate has been solved. Like everyone from Yarnum went down here, saw this, and was just like, "Oh shit!" And then went
Guys,
of locks and chains.
If you get to New Game 20, all of the chains come off.
Yeah.
They call it Bloodborne off the chain.
Yeah.
Don't laugh at that.
Oh, I'm gonna laugh at that. It's great.
The boss here is weird.
It is.
It's a man-eater boar, which we've been running into these guys pretty consistently throughout the main game.
Yeah, it's weird to be forced to fight one.
Yeah, here's another one. He's got a little bit more HP. The boar is like, we talked about it a little bit in the main game, but like, I always get one shot if I get caught in the charge because I get double hit. Does that happen to you guys as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn very early to dodge.
Yeah, I don't like that. And this guy, his arena is kind of built for that because there are pillars, but he will bust through them if he charges. So your instinct, or my instinct when I see one of these things, is to get behind something so it will finish its charge and I can fight it. But then it busts right through the pillar and one-shots me.
He got me that way too. It's really well designed.
Yeah, it is meant to fuck you up, but it's hard without any kind of cover to fight these things. And that's going to be a running theme in here in the chalices, is the arena being really important to the fight.
Yeah.
And that comes in later when they start kind of remixing regular bosses.
Yeah.
Where it's the same fight, but it's more interesting because of the weird arena you're in. But here it's just a man-eater boar. If you can dodge that first charge, just get behind it and stab something up its butt, and that's all you need.
Yeah, I'm terrible at doing damage to these guys. I never feel like I'm actually getting a lot of mileage off of my attacks.
Yeah.
That's why you gotta fist the pig.
Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they charge, they're very easy to backstab. So layer 2, we run into these labyrinth madmen, who look like flesh versions of the mad ones, which are those things that the Witch of Hemwick summoned.
Yeah, I'd never put that together before. They do look like that.
Yeah.
So, like, we asked the question last time, like, oh, how do they relate? Where do they come from? That might actually be, like a link.
Yeah, like they come from here. They are being summoned from prehistory, from this labyrinth. Because presumably this labyrinth is under all of Yarnum, right? Like, we get to it through the dream, but I don't imagine like the Bergenworth people got to it through the dream. I imagine they actually had an expedition at one point. You know, we never find that physical entryway. Like, we never actually find the connection between them. But the idea of everyone funneling through the hunter's dream doesn't feel right to me either. Like, I don't know. Does that? And not everybody dreams either. Like, we talk about how the game specifically calls out who is actually a member, who's part of the dream. You know, and they could get through the nightmare realm or whatever, which we'll run into later. Like, everything's dreamy weemy, but like it just kind of it just strikes me specifically as if like the labyrinth has to be more or less everywhere because it's so huge. Yeah. So maybe the Hintertomb is specifically under Hemwick.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of it existing below the world of the main game. And when the game first came out, me and a friend of mine were talking about how much more satisfying the Chalice Dungeons would be if they would have some sort of connection, like a shortcut back. Like if you could leave the Hintertomb and wind up in Hemwick, or if you could leave the Chalice and wind up in, I don't know, Old Yarnum somewhere, how cool that would be. Like it would give you that kind of wraparound, like, no, this isn't just some random game world that they're spawning. Like I'm actually connected to this main world.
Yeah.
I really like that idea a whole lot. I wish they had done something with it. But I like the idea of being able to summon people from underneath. Something like that's just creepy and good.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have some kind of more terrain here. There's a gigantic blood and grease swamp. It's really disgusting. And it has this huge rope bridge. This is where the area kind of explicitly recalls the Defilement, Valley of Defilement, right?
Mm-hmm. Also a little bit of 3-2, the bottom of 3-2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is the game didn't put the gutter in the main game. They put it in the Chalice Dungeons.
Right. Yep, and there's also an undead giant here who has a cleaver, but more importantly, he has a giant ass cannon, and he has this artillery, which can knock you off of ladders. I have found out.
Another new enemy you find here are the bubonic rats.
Yeah,
the rats that are covered with pustules are really disgusting.
Yep,
super gross.
Yeah,
super strong, and also they come at you in larger numbers than the ones from the previous, from the vanilla Pthumerian Chalice.
Yeah. And in this area, mad ones are generally guarding the levers.
Right.
So you eventually get to the ladder and you get to the boss of Layer 2, which is another undead giant. But this one has the cannon. And again, it's using that arena against you. Because it's very close quarters with him. So if you're very close, he can hit you and he attempts to. But if you get far away at all, he's going to blow you up.
Yeah. He has very poor coverage when you're up close, though. So it actually is a little bit easier to manage if you are getting up close and personal than the previous one, I found.
Yep.
Yeah. And then this takes you to Layer 3, which is kind of one of the more interesting ones from a level design perspective. But even that makes it hard to kind of explain what happens beat by beat. There are lots of tunnels and boulders. This is you're kind of going through this in circles in order to find a lever room, which is relatively hidden off to the side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very easy to get lost here. I was playing through this with Illusory, and I feel like it was unfortunate. He might have been getting frustrated with me because I didn't have my microphone, so we couldn't chat.
Oh yeah.
So I would backtrack through an area that I'd already been through, and I just didn't realize I was doing it. And he was kind enough not to make fun of me for doing so. And then whenever I got to where I did the scream emote. Or the roar, because I was pretty pissed. But eventually you get to the boss of this, and again we're talking about them repurposing bosses with the arenas. Here's our old friend, the Bloodstarved Beast.
I love this. This is so good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because if they're going to reuse bosses, they have to do some kind of twist on them. And this one, he's in a arena filled with this poison water.
Yeah. It's like a web work of kind of safe ground that you can walk on. So, whereas the Bloodstarved Beast is a very aggressive enemy that you can control with these pungent blood flasks or whatever, which I decided to use this time because I didn't before and never had. Really effective. Mm-hmm. Even still, as you're trying to keep him from being right up on top of your shit, you are still trying to avoid being poisoned. Especially by him directly too.
Yep. But other than that, like not too special other than the arena. Mm-hmm. Like we fought the Bloodstarved Beast before. Heading to the Lower Hintertomb. And this is it gets darker here.
Yeah.
Like emotionally and luminescently.
It's like, if this
another one.
If this is where they put the dead, like, is there any hope, man? Where are we going to go?
Well, you have to go through the vestibule of dead pets. And then you have to travel through the hallway of lost keys and stuff. Like, it just becomes, more and more depressing as you go.
Until you get to Peak Bleak.
Yep.
Yeah. But we mean atmospherically darker. Like, they are giving you less ambient light to work with.
Yep.
You're introduced to kind of like a new rank and file enemy that you're going to get, the Labyrinth Gravediggers, which are these hooded Pthumerian figures that have these sigils, and they will pick you up. Like they will do this kind of, I guess, rock or Stone Cold Stunner-esque choke slam on you. He's a wrestler, right? It's like a wrestling move.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, cool.
Oh.
As someone who hasn't watched wrestling since like 1987, sure. Yeah.
We'll call Brayton in on it.
Okay. But yeah, these are the guys who are wielding pickaxes, and you'll see them kind of leading these teams of dreglings in their labors.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. There are also spiders in this zone. They're just like the regular spiders in the game that you run into way later, without human faces.
They're tiny. They're much smaller.
Spiders. Yeah. Oh, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you do there's another treasure room here with another madman.
I only made a note of this because it was very, very difficult for me to get him away from the spiders.
Really?
Yeah, I don't remember having a hard time with this, but I don't. I might be misremembering.
Yeah,
I did this today and just tossed a pebble at him. And I cleared out the initial spiders and then tossed a pebble at him, and he just ran right over him.
So what's weird about it is like his like all of these mad ones' aggro distances are really, really high, and so as I was trying to lure them out, he would just come like just running and screaming at me. Yeah.
What an asshole.
What gives him the right?
Yeah. The then boss is the brain sucker.
Yeah.
Who's in a stair arena, but we fought this guy before.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Is this guy bigger than the ones in the main game? He seemed like a little larger, but it's been a while since I've played the main game, so I couldn't remember.
Feels like it, but it could be a venue thing.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah. If anything, he's just got a little bit tougher. Like he's got a little bit of some more HP. But we fought these things before. These are just those Cthulhu-faced, Latvarian or not Latvarian, or Dr. Doom's minions.
Dr. Doom's monsters.
Latvian.
Yes,
is what I meant. Yeah.
Yep.
And then we're on to layer 2.
Layer 2, which starts getting creepier. Like this whole area is kind of like overgrown. There are like roots that are intersecting with the tunnels. It's very slipshod, their construction here. But now we start getting these trees that to me look like agonized corpses. Like all of them are kind of platooning to an extent. And these are kind of acting as pillars, obstructing your view. I've had some enemies jump out from behind them at me.
It's so weird that they introduced these really cool kind of set pieces. Like I like the gigantic swamp of corpse fat in this area or in these areas as well, but they're just so rare. Like it just takes a long time for them to start introducing these new elements that I don't know if they're like all the leftover elements. It's kind of spicing a dish, Yeah. So this is also where you run into more non-aggressive enemies. Which I like. There's a room where they're all worshiping this tombstone,
which is super creepy. Like they're all in those weird positions. Like you'll encounter an NPC in the game much later that gives you a gesture that's really, really cool. And they're all that's what that reminded me of. It's like they're all in these weird like tortured positions. It's very, very creepy.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what that tombstone was though.
Neither could I.
There's no writing on it or anything. So like, it's a neat little set piece, but again, it just feels a little bit half-assed. So it was cool to run into, but I don't know.
It was an old one or one of his lieutenants.
Yeah, something like that. But the boss here is really good.
Yeah, this is a hunter fight.
Yeah, the Forgotten Madman. Not the Forgotten Madmen, like their lost episode where Donald Draper, I don't know, pitches an iPhone. Like, I don't know what happened in the lost episode of Mad Men. I've never actually watched Mad Men.
Donald Draper goes to L.A. and commits a crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Ken Cosgrove is on the case.
Yeah, to join the case, join the force.
For people that have never seen Mad Men, you're doing a really good job describing the last season of Mad Men.
How'd you know I've never seen Mad Men?
Well, Gary mentioned it, so I just assumed.
But yeah, the Forgotten Madman. He's a hunter with the greatsword and also one of the rifle weapons. Forgive me. Do you guys know which one it is?
No,
I don't.
Yeah.
It kind of looked like the blunderbuss just because of the spray, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's not that. It's definitely a rifle shaped one.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
It's a rifle one that looks like it shoots spread ammo, and also he's using a magical item, which we won't find till much later or encounter till next episode, called the Augur of Ebrietas.
Yes. Yep. Which is, even that name is new to us.
Yes.
At this point. So let's not talk about Ebrietas just yet.
Whoops. Okay.
No. You didn't talk about it. I didn't mean you have to cut out the name. I'm just saying, cool. I think names are fair game, but that will end up being an important thing.
Yes.
When we find it.
But what this means is he is a person who can do what looks like summoning tentacles to attack you at a distance.
Yeah, use magic.
Yeah.
Essentially. And the other kind of twist of this fight is he's joined by a buddy.
Yeah.
The madman's escort. which is a great name for a boss. Who shows up with a big hammer to kind of.
I mean, if you're gonna be an escort, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You got him off of Craigslist, spelled with a Y and an E at the end for 1,000 kisses.
Called it Madam Insanity. At her.
So yeah, the escort only appears after you weaken the Forgotten Madman substantially, and joins in the fight. He's got the hammer, the gravestone hammer, and yes, the Kirk hammer. There we go. And makes life pretty hard for you. Like a dual type fight like this, especially with another hunter, is always going to be difficult. And now you're getting two of them, especially when you're not expecting it. It's going to get up under you.
Have you guys seen where he actually comes from? Because anytime it's happened to me, like I've tried to scroll the camera around to see if he spawns from somewhere, if he just literally spawns, but I haven't seen anything that prove it one way or the other.
I have not. I wonder if they're left for deading him and just popping him in wherever you're not looking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, probably.
That would be a bummer if they did that, but it's possible they did. They could just make him rise from the floor.
Yeah.
In the other Mad Ones kind of animation.
Yeah.
I mean, just speaking of that, Batman, the latest Batman game does some of that stuff so well.
Oh god, yeah. Like that's
so
easily
good.
the best part about that game.
Easily, yeah. It's so much fun.
That's on the way, Gary.
Thanks. Then we can talk about Batman. We can do our Arkham Days and Arkham Nights podcast.
Watch out for batarangs.
Yeah. Watch out for Firebug. Some would say the greatest Batman villain.
He's in the game.
He's in the game.
Yeah, he's the worst part of Origin. Batman Arkham Origins.
Well, real quick, the last thing about the Forgotten Madmen is that, and we didn't mention this with the Keeper of the Lords either, but this is beating these two bosses both open up their armor set for purchase in the inside shop.
Yeah.
Oh,
which
yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool because the Bone Ash set that you get from the Keeper of the Lords has the highest fire resist out of the entire game, and then the Madman set just has snakes hanging all over it, which is very cool.
but it will interfere with your with any weapons that you have. Actually, like it'll clip through it, which really bums me out.
Yeah, that's kind of a Souls thing that
Yeah.
all the Souls games have those weird clipping issues.
Yeah. You mostly use that armor to stop snakes from attacking you, because why would a snake attack an armor made of snakes? It'd be an empty gesture.
Man, that would make the Forgotten Woods or the Forbidden Woods or whatever so much easier if that was true.
Yeah. Well, we're getting to that pretty soon.
I forgot you haven't done that yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's
no.
fine,
I'm just saying, like, I was more saying, like, ugh. Because I like that area, but God, is that area, that part of it, a slog. Yeah. On to layer 3 here.
Yes.
Layer 3.
Yep. This is really trappy.
Mm-hmm.
So even down to enemy traps. So there's a guy manning a cannon in a long room, a very dark room where it's hard to see him at the end.
Yeah.
That can, if you're not at full health, can very easily one-shot you.
Yeah.
And
what's
so you kind
funny
of have
is
to rush him.
That's like right in the middle of an area that doesn't have very many enemies.
Yeah. Yep. They keep this area kind of clear, and there are lots of treasure around that room to tempt you into picking up things while you get shot. Yeah.
But it's just manned by a regular Dregling, so you can get up there and then take them out, so you have easy pickings.
Yep. There's the guillotine traps that fall down, which are new.
Yep.
The one shot you, but that are pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh shit. Well, then, there's that. We also run into shops here.
Yep.
Or a shop here, which is the first time, and this can kind of happen in random dungeons as well.
Mm-hmm.
This one is a Bath Messenger one, and this is important because not only does it allow you to restock, but it also sells the defiled Lower Pthumerian Chalice, I believe. You get a Chalice.
The Sinister one, right? Not the defiled.
Yeah, the Sinister one. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You can buy a unique Chalice here, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
you can also spend way too much money on blood vials and bullets because the prices are way jacked up compared to normal.
Yeah.
It's a hazard fee.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. They know you need it.
Do you know how much it costs to ship to the Hintertombs?
Yeah, exactly. It's all the money is in logistics.
But there's all this blood just laying around. Well, blood everywhere, but not a drop to drink.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be salt blood.
Yeah.
Or that's all salt blood. We need to find desalinated.
So the boss of this area, also another fantastic fight. This is a little bit like a mod of the Pthumerian that we fought before. This is the Pthumerian Elder.
It
This
actually
guy
reminds
is
me of a
so
boss
awesome.
we're not going to run into for a while in the main game.
Yeah.
but it reminds me of a critical path boss, or non-critical path, an optional boss from the main game.
Yeah.
This is great. This is really, really good.
Yeah. So he looks similar to that boss. He still has like the red cloak and the crazy face, but at a distance, he will pull out this glowing, fiery, what appears to be like magically manifested crossbow to shoot you. And even when you get close, he's attacking with this kind of like gigantic scythe or sickle, kind of like a Lautrex weapon. What's that called? I can never remember the name of it.
Oh, the
crap! The thing that goes through shields.
Yeah. People are freaking out.
Oh my god! I can't believe I used this weapon for so much for my Karmic Justice build.
Must Google.
Because it has a weird name, like it's weirdly pronounced, but I can't remember it for the life of me.
This is ridiculous. Hold on. Like, this is some of our worst work.
I put in a marker. Don't worry.
Okay. No, I almost think this should just stay in because this is. I got it now. A shotel.
Okay, there we go. The shotel.
Yeah. I always called it a shuttle or a shotel, but everyone else says it weird. So.
Well, we couldn't come up with it off the top of our head, so we're frauds.
Yep.
I'm reducing your Patreon contributions.
So he uses kind of this sickle shotel thing, but he does these like wire fu moves.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he's doing that, he does these kind of like crouching tiger, hidden dragon, like flying across the room shit. Mm-hmm. To get you with it, which is really, really fun, that you can actually interrupt.
Yeah.
And when you do that, that's super fun. Like this guy is very fun to parry.
So is
and
the
he
previous
teleports
Thumerian.
too. He's so much fun when he starts teleporting around the room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too much more to it. Like he is just a very cool. This is a great boss.
Yeah.
It's a duel. Like this is where they hit a lot of the duel fights is in the labyrinth, or in the chalices.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have the design works for Dark Souls 1, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the concept art for the Pyromancer class? One of them was like a really old dude with the cane. That's what this reminds me of, is that original design for the Pyromancer. Like that, because he's always hunched over on that cane and using the weapon in the other hand. Like it just really reminded me of that when I was playing through it again today. And I don't know. I really like this boss. Like I went online and tried to find anything else I could about him, and there's literally nothing out there for him.
Yeah.
So.
No, like that's the thing too. Like I've complained in the main game about like, oh, this beast is just another member of the church. Like these bosses are all fun fights we've been talking about, but up until the end of the Chalice Dungeons, there's not lore behind them. Like there's not story behind this guy.
Yeah.
He's not a specific Pthumerian elder. He's just an old guy from Pthumeria you're fighting. Which is kind of a bummer if it wasn't such a good fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's kind of the like the whole thing about the chalices, though, right? Like, there's no reason for these things except to be fun to fight. Like chalices is all fights all the time.
Yeah. And sometimes
do you guys
fun
think
fights.
we'll see anything like this in Dark Souls 3?
Anything like what? Like the Chalice Dungeons?
The Chalice Dungeons specifically.
I think there'll be some other wrinkle, but every single Souls game has had some new, weird, unique wrinkle. Mm-hmm. So I like to hope that it'll be something that we can't even figure out at this point, that we don't know what it'll be. I would be curious. I want to know, when the Bloodborne Design Works book comes out, after they do the DLC and everything, I want to know what the creators of the game, how they look back on chalices.
Yeah.
Because there's an interview in the guide, but it doesn't have that kind of reflective element.
Yeah, it's looking
chalices.
forward, not looking back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they think that if they consider them to be a success or not.
Well, they're constantly tweaking them.
Yeah, that's true. Which either bespeaks, care or regret.
Either of which are fine.
Yeah, both of which are fine too. Like, and the thing with Chalice Dungeons, and I've said this before, is like, if I consider them a bonus, like, it would, Bloodborne is a very beefy game even without these. If I consider them just as like, here's some extra stuff, I like them.
Yeah.
If they were mandatory content, I would think it was the worst content in the game, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that experimentation should be, if not rewarded or lauded, at least acknowledged. And
yes.
Even looking at it as a bonus and looking further beyond that, if these are concepts, if these are designs, if these are even boss fights that we otherwise would not have gotten to see, I'm happy that we got to see them. It's only regrettable that they are kind of packed in such a repetitive package.
If this is phase 1, I cannot wait to see phase 2, because I think like if this is their first effort and they're going to refine this over, say, Bloodborne 2, like that would be. I'm still into it. Like I like the concept, I just don't quite gel with the execution so much.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of it for our first wing of Chalice Dungeons. We'll be hitting this 2 more times, sprinkled throughout the season, along with our other special episodes.
Yeah.
And so that's Chalice's. Jeremy, thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me so much. This was a really fun time.
It's always so great having you.
Yeah, we don't mean it. We're not necessarily kicking you off or anything. I just wanted to say thanks for having us on the for being on the Chalice Dungeon episode.
Well, again, I really enjoy doing the show, so thank you very much for having me, and it's always a pleasure.
Where can people find you around the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at JGGREER. I also have a YouTube channel under Not ECEC where I put up Dark Souls videos, Bloodborne videos, and even videos of games that aren't made by From Software. And then if you just have a thing about Dark Souls and foul language, you can find me at darksoulshaters.tumblr.com. That's where I collect all of the hate mail from Dark Souls games that I and many other people get. So come by and give me a follow, or say a like, or a reblog, or a comment, or I don't know any other social media terms besides those. Can you dig me on something? I don't know how any of that works. But, come in and say hi.
Can you try me? Can you try me real quick?
I'll give you some Zanga coins. It's cool.
Yeah, I'll hit you up with an LO buck.
My ICQ number is 45623.
The thing about that blog is it is a lot of terrible language and terrible people who are on display, but it's interesting anthropologically.
Oh yeah,
like it is almost like a monster zoo of just like the worst of the community. Which I feel very good about the community in general, but it is also useful to have this kind of quarantine zone of shitheads that you provide. So thank you for being the shithead zookeeper that we need.
The most recent post, and you guys can bleep this out however you want to make it funny, but the most recent post has a sentence in it saying, "Welcome to my block list, you useless, no talent, trailer trash, motherfucking cunt hole."
Yeah.
Which gives you a pretty good idea of what you're going to find on the site.
and keep in mind, though, like the thing that is always amazing, and that I feel like there should just be a flashing sign that reminds people this when they're reading the blog, is that was in response to something that happened within the boundaries of Bloodborne. Imagine the worst thing that could happen to you that's within the boundaries of the video game Bloodborne, and that inspired that kind of vitriol. Was it a hacker? No. It was somebody using a weapon the guy didn't like. It's unreasonable. So what are we doing next time, Cole?
Next time we are doing the Forbidden Woods, and we are going to be joined by Bob Mackey of Retronauts and of usgamer.net.
Yeah. I am looking forward to that. Bob requested this area specifically, so and it is a good one.
Yeah.
So and there'll be a long episode. It's a big area, I think. And then after that, we have more stuff planned, more special episodes, more plot stuff. We will get to the no spoiler point at some point. So people who are frustrated about us not talking about this mysterious Abritus will eventually, be redeemed.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to help out the show, you can head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating or review. It's been a little while since we had one of those. Yeah. And that's always appreciated. It helps people learn about the show, gets us up in the iTunes rankings, makes us one of what's hot, which I like feeling hot rather than not. and it just helps get the show in front of more people.
Yeah, we're up there in the rankings right now, which is cool. If you would like to support us more directly, and iTunes is a great way to do that, but monetarily, if you have a couple of bucks kicking around, and we totally understand if you don't, times are tough, but you can go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, and there you can pledge a certain amount per month and get some rewards. We're incredibly appreciative of everybody who chooses to support us that way. It does help us in ways that sometimes are not directly apparent, but we're talking offline about something kind of cool possibly coming up, and it's only possible thanks to your help.
Yeah. And if you don't have $1 and you don't have iTunes and everything, if you want other people to know about the show, you can tweet about it or blog about it or tell other people about it. If you don't even like that, if you don't even want to do that, you don't want to do anything, you just want to listen, that's also okay.
Yeah.
We still appreciate it. I think that's probably about it.
Just about.
Yeah. What else what should they do until next time, Cole?
They should seek misery so the blood might be sated.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon